China has flatly rejected recent accusations from the Philippines, which claim that Beijing is acting aggressively in the South China Sea. Chinese officials have responded swiftly and unequivocally, labeling these allegations as unfounded and part of a broader campaign to misrepresent China's intentions on the global stage. According to Beijing, the Philippine statements are deliberate distortions, crafted to mislead the international community and paint China as the provocateur in the region. Instead, Chinese authorities insist that it is Manila who is stirring up tensions and provoking conflict, rather than China. They argue that the Philippines' actions are calculated to escalate disputes and draw in external actors. Beijing further accuses the Philippines of working closely with outside powers, most notably the United States, in an effort to destabilize the region and challenge China's sovereignty. This, they claim, is part of a larger strategy to contain China's rise and influence in Asia. China continues to assert its sweeping historical claims over the South China Sea, referencing centuries of navigation, fishing, and administration in these waters. The so-called Nine-Dash Line remains central to China's narrative, despite international criticism. In 2016, an international tribunal in The Hague ruled against China's expansive claims, declaring them invalid under international law. However, Beijing has consistently dismissed this ruling, arguing that the tribunal lacked authority and that its decision is irrelevant to China's rights. Chinese officials maintain that international legal frameworks, such as the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, fail to recognize China's deep-rooted historical presence and legitimate interests in these waters. They argue that history, not just modern treaties, should guide the resolution of these disputes. From Beijing's perspective, its actions in the South China Sea are purely defensive, aimed at safeguarding what it considers its sovereign territory and protecting vital maritime rights. Chinese patrols and military maneuvers are portrayed as necessary measures to deter foreign encroachment. The visible presence of Chinese Coast Guard and naval vessels is, in Beijing's view, a justified and measured response to what it perceives as repeated provocations and unauthorized incursions by other countries. This uncompromising stance leaves little room for negotiation or compromise. China fundamentally rejects both the legitimacy of the Philippines' territorial claims and the international legal rulings that support them, insisting that its own historical narrative must prevail. The result is a dangerous and persistent impasse, with each side viewing the other's assertion of sovereignty as a direct threat and blatant act of aggression. Tensions remain high, and the risk of escalation is ever present. This deep and widening divide sets the stage for ongoing confrontation and uncertainty in these strategically vital and hotly contested waters, with no clear resolution in sight. Under President Marcos Jr., the Philippines has shifted to a more assertive strategy, openly publicizing Chinese incursions and strengthening security ties, especially with the United States. Manila's new approach centers on building alliances to uphold international law and resist China's expansive claims. The defense minister has made it clear, meaningful diplomacy requires China to align its claims with international law. The Philippines is expanding joint patrols and exercises with partners like India, Japan, and Australia, signaling a broader international front. This coalition aims to raise the diplomatic and security costs for China's continued aggression. By internationalizing the dispute, Manila hopes to create a more balanced security environment and show it's not facing China alone. The issue is now a global concern, not just a bilateral dispute. A recent collision near Scarborough Shoal exposed the risks of China's aggressive tactics. Two Chinese vessels, a Coast Guard cutter and a Navy destroyer, collided while pursuing a smaller Philippine ship. The incident, which damaged the Coast Guard ship, was seen as an embarrassing overreach for Beijing. Deploying a naval destroyer against a civilian vessel is highly escalatory and unusual. Analysts say the aggressive maneuver backfired, highlighting poor coordination and the dangers of military-grade tactics in maritime policing. This event underscores the volatility in the South China Sea, where miscalculation could quickly escalate. The Chinese government has remained silent, but its pattern of assertiveness continues. Each encounter now carries the risk of sparking a wider crisis. The United States has deployed a powerful contingent of naval warships to the West Philippine Sea, making a bold statement of support for the Philippines at a time of heightened tensions. This move is not just symbolic, It's a clear demonstration of America's willingness to stand by its allies in the region and uphold international law. The deployment signals a firm commitment to regional stability and security. Far from being a routine patrol, these operations are a direct response to China's increasingly assertive actions in these contested waters, where sovereignty and maritime rights are hotly disputed. The U.S. Navy's visible presence acts as a deterrent, sending a message to Beijing that its maneuvers are being closely monitored by a formidable force. This watchful stance is meant to discourage any unilateral changes to the status quo. Through freedom of navigation operations, the U.S. challenges China's sweeping maritime claims, reinforcing the principle that these waters remain open to all nations and are not the exclusive domain of any single power. For Manila, the arrival of American warships is a source of reassurance and a significant strategic boost. It highlights the enduring strength of the U.S.-Philippines alliance, reminding both friends and rivals that the partnership remains robust and ready to respond to threats. However, this deployment also raises the stakes in the region, increasing the risk of direct confrontation between U.S. and Chinese forces. The potential for miscalculation or accidental escalation is ever present. Every encounter between these navies is fraught with tension, requiring exceptional professionalism and restraint to prevent incidents that could spiral out of control. The U.S. presence serves as both a stabilizing force and, paradoxically, a potential flashpoint. Its very existence a reminder of the delicate balance in these waters. Ultimately, the deployment of U.S. warships underscores the high-stakes drama now unfolding in the West Philippine Sea, where the world watches closely, aware that the next move could shape the future of the entire region. The United States has repeatedly affirmed its unwavering commitment to defend the Philippines, a promise anchored in the historic 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty. This treaty, signed in the aftermath of World War II, established a formal alliance between the two nations, pledging mutual support in the event of external armed attack. Over the decades, this agreement has served as the bedrock of U.S.-Philippine security relations, shaping military cooperation and strategic planning in the region. High-level visits, regular defense dialogues, and substantial military aid continue to underscore the strength of this alliance. Washington has provided Manila with advanced equipment, training, and intelligence support, helping the Philippines modernize its armed forces and significantly improve maritime security. Joint military exercises and coordinated patrols in contested waters further demonstrate the practical benefits of this partnership, sending a clear signal of unity and preparedness. Despite this robust support, concerns persist about whether the Philippines, even with U.S. backing, can effectively deter China's assertive actions in the South China Sea. Philippine officials and military leaders remain vigilant, aware of the growing challenges posed by China's expanding presence and capabilities in the region. Some analysts argue that Beijing remains skeptical the U.S. would risk direct conflict with a nuclear-armed power over disputed maritime territory. This perception, they warn, could embolden China to test the limits of U.S. resolve, increasing the risk of miscalculation or confrontation in these contested waters. In response, U.S. strategy now emphasizes integrated deterrence, a comprehensive approach that links Philippine capabilities with American military power, intelligence, and technology. By deepening interoperability and joint planning, the two allies aim to close the credibility gap and present a united front that is both capable and ready to respond to any threat. The ultimate goal is to make the treaty's deterrent effect not just symbolic but real and credible in the eyes of Beijing. Demonstrating this resolve is essential to maintaining stability and preventing escalation in the region. U.S. officials have repeatedly clarified that any armed attack on Philippine forces, including its Coast Guard or public vessels, anywhere in the South China Sea, would immediately trigger American defense obligations under the treaty. This explicit commitment removes any ambiguity, sending a strong and unmistakable deterrent message to China and reassuring both the Philippines and other regional allies of U.S. resolve. The alliance's broader aim is to maintain peace, stability, and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, a region vital to global commerce, energy supplies, and the security interests of many nations. The ongoing challenge is to ensure that China truly believes the U.S. will act decisively if provoked, thereby preserving deterrence and reducing the risk of conflict in one of the world's most strategically important waterways. Security experts warn that incidents like the recent Chinese vessel collision are symptoms of a dangerously volatile situation. Aggressive maneuvers and military hardware and law enforcement create fertile ground for miscalculation. The US-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty means a single incident could draw in a global superpower. A clash between the US and China would have devastating global consequences. Chinese personnel driven by nationalism may take dangerous risks, raising the stakes. As gray zone tactics become routine, the line between law enforcement and acts of war blurs. Preventing escalation requires clear communication, de-escalation, and credible deterrence. To counter China's coercion, the US and Philippines must build a more credible deterrent in the West Philippine Sea. Accelerating Philippine military modernization is key, delivering advanced systems, joint training, and rapid integration. But hardware alone isn't enough. A clear message must be sent that aggression will have swift consequences. This involves diplomatic signaling, economic coordination, and a persistent military presence. The goal is to make the costs of aggression unthinkable for China. Deterrence is about shaping perceptions, convincing Beijing that escalation isn't worth it. Proactive measures like pre-positioning supplies and expanding US access to bases are essential. A strong, integrated partnership is the best shield for peace and stability. Some strategists propose the US formally invoke Articles 3 and 4 of its Mutual Defense Treaty with the Philippines in response to China's aggression. This wouldn't mean war, but would require formal consultations and joint planning at the highest level. Such a move would send a powerful message to Beijing about the seriousness of US commitments. It would elevate the alliance from rhetoric to a clear legal obligation, raising the risks for China. This proactive step could deter further aggression without resorting to force. It signals the alliance is ready for contemporary challenges, not just historical ones. Strategic ambiguity, backed by formal treaty processes, can be a stronger deterrent than military posturing alone. Despite political divisions in the US, there's strong bipartisan support for prioritizing Indo-Pacific security and countering China's influence. This rare consensus gives Washington and Manila a unique chance to deepen their alliance. By leveraging this support, both nations can secure funding, expand intelligence sharing, and codify joint plans. The challenge is turning shared principles into concrete action. A strong, modernized alliance is the best anchor for regional stability. It sends a clear message: the rule of law will be defended and coercion won't succeed. By standing together, the US and Philippines can help shape a peaceful, rules-based future for the region.